fear. It's that nagging voice in your head telling you that you're not good enough, that you'll fail, that you should just stay in your comfort zone where it's safe. But what if I told you that the very thing holding you back is also the doorway to your greatest growth? I'm not talking about eliminating fear. I'm talking about transforming your relationship with it. The most successful people in the world aren't fearless. They're afraid just like the rest of us. The difference? They've learned to work with their fear rather than being paralyzed by it. Today, we're going to explore how you can do the same. Fear is hardwired into our biology. It's an evolutionary response designed to keep us safe from threats. When our ancestors heard rustling in the bushes, fear triggered their fight-or-flight response, preparing them to either confront the danger or run away. This mechanism saved countless lives throughout human history. But here's the problem. In our modern world, most of our fears aren't about physical survival. They're psychological. Fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of the unknown. Yet our bodies respond as if we're facing a life or death situation. Your heart races, your palms sweat, and your mind goes blank, all because you're about to give a presentation or ask someone out on a date. The first step to overcoming fear is understanding that it's normal. Everyone experiences fear. Even the people you admire most have moments of doubt and uncertainty. The goal isn't to eliminate fear, but to develop a healthier relationship with it. Let me share a personal story. A few years ago, I was offered an opportunity to speak at a major conference. It was exactly the kind of platform I had been hoping for to share my ideas and grow my career. But as the date approached, my fear grew exponentially. I started having nightmares about forgetting my lines or being laughed off stage. I even considered backing out. Then I remembered something I'd read about reframing fear. Instead of seeing my physical symptoms, racing heart, butterflies, and stomach, as signs of fear, I could interpret them as excitement. Both fear and excitement create similar physiological responses. The difference is in how we label them. So I started telling myself, I'm not afraid, I'm excited. I repeated this mantra whenever I felt the fear rising, and something interesting happened. My perspective shifted. I began to see the opportunity rather than the threat. I still felt nervous, but it was a nervous energy that propelled me forward rather than holding me back. The day of the presentation came, and while I wasn't perfect, I delivered a talk I was proud of. The audience was engaged, and several people approached me afterward to continue the conversation. That experience taught me that fear doesn't have to be a barrier. It can be fuel if you know how to use it. Now let's talk about how you can apply this to your own life. The first step is to identify your fears. What's holding you back? Is it fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of success, fear of the unknown? Take a moment to reflect on this. You might even want to write down your fears to make them more concrete. Once you've identified your fears, the next step is to understand their root causes. Our fears often stem from past experiences or beliefs we've developed over time. Maybe you were criticized harshly as a child, and now you fear judgment. Or perhaps you tried something new once and failed, leading to a fear of taking risks. Understanding the origins of your fears doesn't make them disappear, but it does give you power over them. It allows you to see that your fears are based on past experiences that may not be relevant to your current situation. Now let's talk about developing a growth mindset. This concept, popularized by psychologist Carol Dweck, is about believing that your abilities can be developed through dedication and hard work. People with a growth mindset see challenges as opportunities to learn and grow, not as threats to their self-worth. Developing a growth mindset involves reframing how you think about failure. Instead of seeing failure as proof that you're not good enough, view it as valuable feedback that can help you improve. Ask yourself, what can I learn from this experience? Rather than, why am I such a failure? This shift in perspective can transform how you approach fear. When you're afraid of failing at something, remind yourself that failure is not the opposite of success. It's part of the journey towards success. Every successful person has failed numerous times on their path to achievement. Another powerful strategy for overcoming fear is gradual exposure. This involves facing your fears in small, manageable doses. If you're afraid of public speaking, You might start by speaking up more in small group settings, then progress to presenting to a slightly larger group, and so on. Each time you face your fear and survive, your brain receives the message that the feared situation isn't as dangerous as you thought. Over time, this can significantly reduce your fear response. Let me give you an example. I once worked with someone who had a severe fear of flying. We started by having her look at pictures of airplanes, then watch videos of flights. Next, she visited an airport and watched planes take off and land. Eventually, she took a short flight with a supportive friend by her side. Each step was challenging but manageable, and over time, her fear decreased to the point where she could fly without overwhelming anxiety. This approach works for all kinds of fears. If you're afraid of rejection, start by asking for small things where rejection wouldn't be devastating. If you're afraid of failure, begin with low-stakes projects where you can learn without severe consequences. Now, let's talk about the power of visualization. Athletes have long used visualization techniques to improve performance and manage pre-competition anxiety. The same principles can help you overcome fear in any area of life. Here's how it works. Close your eyes and vividly imagine yourself successfully navigating the situation you fear. Engage all your senses. What do you see? What do you hear? How does it feel to succeed despite your fear? Research shows that the brain doesn't always distinguish between a vividly imagined experience and a real one. By repeatedly visualizing success, you're essentially programming your brain to expect a positive outcome rather than a negative one. Another crucial aspect of overcoming fear is self-compassion. Many of us are our own harshest critics. We speak to ourselves in ways we would never speak to a friend. This self-criticism amplifies our fears and makes it harder to take risks. Practice treating yourself with the same kindness and understanding you would offer to a good friend. When you're facing a fear, acknowledge that it's difficult and remind yourself that everyone struggles sometimes. This self-compassion creates a safer internal environment for taking risks and facing fears. Let's also consider the role of support systems in overcoming fear. Surrounding yourself with supportive people can make a tremendous difference in your ability to face your fears. These might be friends, family members, mentors, or even professional coaches or therapists. The right support system provides encouragement when you're struggling, celebrates your successes, and offers perspective when fear distorts your thinking. They remind you of your strengths when you forget them and help you pick yourself up when you fall. I remember when I was starting my business, the fear of failure was almost paralyzing. What if no one hired me? What if I couldn't pay my bills? What if I had to admit to everyone that I had failed? During this time, my support system was invaluable. They reminded me of past challenges I had overcome, helped me develop contingency plans, which reduced my fear of the unknown, and simply listened when I needed to express my fears without judgment. Now, let's talk about a powerful technique for confronting fear: asking better questions. The questions we ask ourselves shape our focus and consequently our emotions. When facing fear, many of us ask disempowering questions like, "What if I fail?" or "What if I make a fool of myself?" These questions direct our focus toward potential negative outcomes, amplifying our fear. Instead, try asking empowering questions like, "What's the worst that could happen, and could I handle it?" Or, "What might I regret more, trying and failing, or never trying at all?" Better questions lead to better answers, which can transform your relationship with fear. They help you see opportunities where you previously saw only threats. Another effective strategy is to create a fear-setting exercise, a concept popularized by Tim Ferriss. This involves defining your fear in detail, identifying ways to prevent the feared outcome, thinking about how you would repair the situation if the worst happened, and considering the cost of inaction. This exercise helps you realize that even the worst-case scenario is usually manageable, while the cost of letting fear control your decisions can be enormous in terms of missed opportunities and regrets. Let's also consider the power of taking action despite fear. Action is the antidote to fear. When you take action, you shift from passive worrying to active problem solving. Even small steps forward can build momentum and confidence. Remember, courage isn't the absence of fear. It's taking action despite fear. Every time you act courageously, you strengthen your courage muscle, making it easier to face future fears. I've found that one of the most effective ways to overcome fear is to connect with a purpose larger than yourself. When you're focused on serving others or contributing to something meaningful, your personal fears often diminish in importance. For example, if you're afraid of public speaking but you're passionate about a cause, focusing on the message you want to share rather than on your performance can help you push through the fear. Your desire to make a difference becomes stronger than your fear of judgment. Now, let's talk about the importance of celebrating your victories over fear, no matter how small. Each time you face a fear, acknowledge your courage. This positive reinforcement helps rewire your brain to associate facing fears with reward rather than threat. Keep a courage journal where you record instances when you acted despite fear. Review it regularly to remind yourself of your capacity for bravery, especially when facing new challenges. It's also worth noting that sometimes professional help is needed to overcome particularly intense or persistent fears. If your fears are significantly impacting your quality of life, consider working with a therapist who specializes in anxiety and phobias. Techniques like cognitive behavioral therapy have been proven highly effective for overcoming fears. As we near the end of our discussion, I want to emphasize that overcoming fear is not a one-time achievement, but an ongoing practice. You'll never completely eliminate fear from your life, nor should you want to. Remember, fear serves an important protective function. Instead, aim to develop a healthier relationship with fear. Learn to recognize when fear is keeping you safe and when it's unnecessarily limiting you. Practice the strategies we've discussed to move forward despite fear. When doing so serves your growth and goals. The journey of overcoming fear is ultimately about expanding your comfort zone. Each time you face a fear, your comfort zone grows a little larger. Activities that once terrified you become manageable, even enjoyable. And as your comfort zone expands, so does your life. Imagine what your life could look like if fear no longer controlled your decisions. What would you do differently? What goals would you pursue? What relationships would you nurture? The possibilities are limitless when you learn to work with your fear rather than against it. In conclusion, fear is a natural part of the human experience, but it doesn't have to control your life. By understanding the nature of fear, developing a growth mindset, practicing gradual exposure, using visualization techniques, cultivating self-compassion, building a strong support system, asking better questions, taking action despite fear, connecting with a larger purpose, and celebrating your victories, you can transform your relationship with fear. Remember, the goal isn't to become fearless, it's to become brave. It's to recognize your fear, acknowledge it, and then make a conscious choice about whether to let it guide your decisions or to move forward despite it. So I challenge you, what fear will you face today? What small step can you take toward the life you want, even if it scares you? The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And sometimes that first step is the scariest, but also the most important. Thank you for watching. I'd love to hear about your experiences with fear and the strategies that have helped you overcome it. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more content on personal growth and development. Until next time, remember, on the other side of your greatest fears lies your greatest growth.